appreciate Brian Kuntz being on the line with us today. We're excited to have him on, and a lot of the themes that he has today to talk about are pretty relevant to what's going on in the world. So, welcome, Brian, and thanks for being on today.
Chris, so thanks so much for having me. This is fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah, it's excited. So, I've known Brian for a while, and wanted to give the our audience a chance to learn a little bit more about him. And so, Brian, tell the audience a little bit about who you are and maybe some of your business background coming up on your current role at Lessonly.
Yeah, so I'm an enterprise account executive for Lessonly. So that means I manage customers that have 5,000 employees and above. And Lessonly is a virtual training platform specifically geared towards frontline teams. So think sales and customer service teams that have a lot of things that are constantly changing. And they're trying to figure out not only how do we onboard new people, but how do we continually enable them to do great work at their job. And so I've spent 15 plus years in software, majority of it in sales and sales leadership, and just really enjoy it and enjoy all things technology.
Yeah, and I know you're definitely, if we were to pull up your resume, it certainly shows that, and your background in the tech and software industry really speaks to a lot of, and even to Indianapolis as a technology market, because if you were to drive in any direction several hours, people probably wouldn't think of Indianapolis as a technology hub, but you would say different, huh?
Yeah, I mean, some people try to exaggerate it a little bit and, kind of Silicon Valley of the West and use those type of acronyms that we certainly aren't. But I can tell you when I came out of Purdue back in 2003, there weren't a whole lot of options when it came to technology firms. I just happened to kind of luck into it. Didn't even really know that I would enjoy it as much as I do. But now, due to the success of the Exact Targets of the world, that spread a lot of money out and gave people the opportunity to start up a lot of new companies. So Indy has a lot of firms and a lot of growing venture capital coming in supporting the technology ecosystem.
So with that, then there's been the Exact Targets and the sales forces of our city, and then the businesses that kind of work off of those platforms or kind of provide additional ancillary businesses. Is that where you've seen the growth come from, or?
Yeah, a lot of it, and also too, it kind of showed the rest of the country, hey, they've got some talented people in Indianapolis that have some really great ideas. And I think a lot of people, before going back to the early 2000s, people thought of San Francisco and to a lesser degree, New York City. And that's where they thought all the technology was, and people just kind of came there. And I think you look at the schools, the universities surrounding Indianapolis, you have Butler, you have IU, you have Purdue, and all contributing really kind of great graduates that have a great deal of insight and capability. So you looked at the workforce and also, quite frankly, what they pay in Indianapolis is really attractive to a lot of those firms.
Yeah, and from a cost of living standpoint, it's certainly quite different than being in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, I know. It's nice to be an adult and not have to have a roommate if you don't want a roommate.
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff. So you mentioned coming out of Purdue and kind of falling into the software industry. I know some of that background put you in working in the financial sector, right?
Yeah, so go back to 2008 when we were going through the financial crisis. I was actually selling loan origination software into banks, and would be calling on prospects and customers that we'd be pretty far along in a deal, or they just started to implement Baker Hill. And you're calling and you're getting messages from the FDIC saying the bank's closed, they're no longer in operation, here's where you need to go. So it was an interesting time. I mean, our business, pretty much stalled overnight. And so it was one of those where you had to kind of take a step back, reset and focus. And when you and I talked about doing a podcast and talking to your team, we talked about some of the things that got me through that period of time. to really make that time, even though it was challenging. How do you really thrive during those periods of tumultuous events?
Yeah, and to your point, I mean that you're definitely a survivor. If you were in sales in 2008 through 2012, that was a trying time for any type of sales for sure.
Yeah, it was a grind for you too. I mean, real estate was equally, a tough period of time to try and adjust through that.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about in our company, the market of the moment and adapting and how adaptation leads to innovation. So I imagine we'll probably talk about that at some point, but I'm sure you're seeing that on your end as we work through this COVID deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody knows what's around the corner, and so you're looking for ways to innovate and be responsive to the market at the same time.
Yeah. Well, good. So fast forward to today, you're an enterprise account executive at Lessonly. Tell the audience, what does Lessonly do? Who are your? I know you kind of mentioned it early on, but uh, maybe dig in a little bit deeper about what you guys do for your clients.
Yeah, so Max Yoder and Connor Burt are the two co-founders of Lessonly. And when they found Lessonly, they were really looking for something that they could build that would help people live better lives. And we spend so much time at work. What they ultimately came to was, if we could make people's lives better, if we could make them do better work at their jobs and then come home from work and enjoy their lives more, let's do that. And so they started this company, Lessonly, really oriented around how do we onboard and enable people as they come on to an organization. And the reason that they went in that direction was anybody who's worked in a large corporate organization and gone through that training program, it's all that basic stuff about here's compliance, here's where you go to get your benefits, here's a little bit about the company. And what they found is there's a lot of training that takes place outside of that because those platforms aren't nimble enough to really help them. And so in particular, the two teams that they saw most frequently were sales and customer support, just feeling like, hey, we can't really leverage this old training platform that we have out there. We need something that can work with us and work at the speed at which we work. And so we really started tailoring our platform to help those teams learn, practice, and perform. And so when we talk about those three things, we think about it in the sense of obviously the knowledge, right? We can deliver a platform that allows them to have that knowledge. But then where do you go and get your practice reps? Well, typically for a salesperson, for a customer support person, is like push them onto the phones, let them start just it out along the way. And that's not really the best way to do that. And so our platform allows people to actually get those practice reps, whether it be video or audio or email or chat, getting those scenarios that are common that they're going to encounter, allow them to practice. So then when they are on the phones, when they are interacting with their customers, there's a consistent message being delivered, and that the agents and reps are empowered to really be successful at their job.
Well, that's good stuff. Yeah, I can see where a lot of those systems that are internal and at least need to be internal can work with a third party like yourself to make it more impactful, I guess, and nimble is a good word.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so now looking, out into the current work world, we've all been uh, we've all been impacted by these external factors with quarantines and restrictions uh, and crashing or a volatile stock market at least. And it's not just one company or one industry that's been impacted. It's everybody, right? So I know you got a chance to talk to our company um, at our meeting, and you kind of started things off of resetting your horizon. So what does that mean for you, and how would you share that concept?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways of talking about that, and I've heard resetting your horizon, eating the elephant, and so on and so forth. And for us, what that means, that really was the resetting your horizon was something that our CEO Connor Burt talked about, and it was important for me because I had a couple of deals that were large, multi-million dollar deals that really stalled overnight due to what's happening with the pandemic. And I found myself being a little bit frustrated and feeling a lot like 2008, where you can grind it out, but that wears on you after a while. And so I had to take a step back, and really what that meant for resetting your horizon was, as a salesperson, you're typically looking at what's my annual number and what's my personal target, right? So if I'm looking at any quota, I'm looking at, I want to be 120% of quota, not just 100%. I want to be 120%. And you're looking at that long-term view. What resetting your horizon means is you got to start breaking it down into smaller chunks. When things aren't going right, it's important for you to look at smaller chunks of time. I think when I talked to your group, I mentioned the Joe Rogan podcast, which I'm a huge fan of, and Andy Stump, who was a Navy SEALs trainer, was on there, and he was talking about just the mental strain associated with the Navy SEAL training. There's Hell Week, but there's a longer period of time associated with it, which is essentially like 6 months. And he talked about the physical requirements for that are pretty intense. But he said the thing that differentiates the people that start the program versus the people that actually finish the program is really mental, because it's a pretty broad scope of people who apply to be Navy SEALs, but less than 10% of applicants actually graduate. And so he talked about that mental strain associated with it. And he said the people that ended up dropping out just get overwhelmed. They get overwhelmed by the magnitude of thinking about, okay, I've got 6 months of really grinding through this. Am I going to be able to really keep this up? And he talked about the ones that were really successful were the ones that were able to break it down, and they were able to say, okay, I'm just going to focus on sun up to sun down. I'm going to do that 180 times. And so every time their focus was on, how do I just kind of get that next thing? And so for me, and my job as a salesperson, when things aren't going right, when people aren't, picking up their phones, when people aren't moving deals forward, you have to look at what are the things that I can do to be successful. And in order to do that, you need to break it down into smaller chunks. So now I look at my time and I look at what's the next 60 minutes, and what can I do to make sure that I'm successful now, and also set myself up for continued success as things start to turn around. And so it's that whole idea of, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally, maybe a sales cycle or someone in an industry like you're in might look 6 months down the road. Like, my pipeline is, what I do now, is I see the impact 6 months from now. And now there's a lot of things that are out of our control, housing included. And we just look at what we can do today and this week that can be a habit that we know is proven, and that it's within our control. And if we do that, if we participate, if we show up and we control what we can control, we know that we'll at least see results from that. Is that kind of summarize how you're looking at it? Or
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think especially for people maybe who haven't been through difficult times, that this type of thing is new to them. Maybe their industry wasn't hit as hard in 2008. It is just really, really easy to get overwhelmed. And it's like, well, I don't know when people are going to get back to work, whether people are going to be laid off. I don't know whether I'm going to lose my job. And like you said, you have to control the things that you can control, and control them in smaller segments, so that you're contributing as a team to your organization, and hoping that when things do turn around, that your team's set up to be successful.
Yeah, I know in the real estate industry that the average lifespan of someone's real estate sales career is pretty short. And I think that as an industry, we've done an injustice of not preparing someone for not just market cycles, but even seasonal cycles. So in real estate, there's a span where things get really busy, and then there's a time, it's not maybe as wide as it used to be, but there's a time when sales slow down. And just from an expectation standpoint, not just, hey, you need to maybe wait 90 days before your first closing, but know that you're going to experience some cyclical shifts every year, and then there's going to be market cycle shifts too. And so in real estate, I think we've done a bad job of preparing new agents as they get into the field. How would you maybe parlay that into a different industry? Do you see that happening elsewhere?
Just in terms of I think we see, so a role that's pretty common for burnout and kind of short cycles is SDR or business development reps that are just doing a lot of the cold calling and the researching and trying to get into organizations. And that can be a frustrating process, just more generally speaking, right? People don't see that and say, hey, I want to do that the rest of my life because it's a grind. And so they very easily get burnout. Same with sales, right? I mean, just any sales. If you're thinking that, you know, it's that you're immune to market influences and changes even within your organization, you're being naive. And so, yeah, I agree. I think people don't prepare you for that. And it's just something you almost have to go through once to figure it out and figure out how you're going to survive through those times.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. That is good stuff. So another concept I know we talked about was, well, it was a zig when others zag is what you called it. And you brought mention of all of the communication that we got when COVID happened, and it became so, there became so much of the same thing that the message was blurred out when it was really a caring message, maybe an email from a large corporation. We got so many of them that it just, you tuned out, right? So what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I mean, what I brought up was a couple of emails from some large retailers and talking about here's how we're helping our customers through these challenging times. And it's I get it. Like the first thing is, I think the important part is everybody had to be compassionate. They had to be understanding of, look, everybody's going through a lot of different change right now. For me personally, it was now I'm working from home with a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old and my wife and grandparents that are helping us out and, you know, getting us through this process. And so it's just a challenging time. So I think the first part, I don't want to be dismissive of the compassionate part, right? Because that's really important. But you were seeing that message over and over again to the point that you saw those emails, you saw the first line and you're immediately deleting it because you're like, I know where this is going, right? And you're seeing that in every industry, right? And it's very prominent in the software industry. There's a lot of imitation, and sometimes imitation is the greatest form of flattery, but it's important for you to be able to differentiate yourself. So I like that idea of being able to zig when others zag. So when something starts to feel stale, it's time to be different, right? So we sent out the same exact messages of, you know, here's how we're helping people go remote during this challenging time. And it was with sincere compassion that we were sending that message out, but it was also important for us to kind of stay ahead of, okay, well, what's going to be next? So our organization has a fantastic marketing leader in Kyle Lacey, and they've just done a phenomenal job, their team, of keeping us ahead of the curve. And so they've done some things like they created a Little Llamas page where they had coloring books and word searches and I spies for all those people that are dealing with now working with their kids as coworkers. It's how can we keep them occupied? So giving them the resources to do that. We started shifting our marketing events, which were heavily focused in market. So we would go into our major metro areas and we would do marketing events that were either cocktail classes, or we would do cooking classes, or just have dinner and drinks. So we shifted those to virtual events, and now we actually had a wine sommelier from Italy join a Zoom meeting. We're doing a mixology class online. Yeah, I mean, just a lot of very cool things that allow us to still stay connected with our prospects and our customers, but do it in a way that, you know, kind of fits everybody's schedule now. The other thing that we did was our sales team started looking for new technology, right? How can we differentiate ourselves? People aren't picking up the phones. People are less interested in emails because they're just getting flooded in their inboxes. We used a technology called Loom. Loom allows you to record your screen and also your face at kind of the same time, and be able to send those in an email that has a little GIF that plays through it. So it plays like the first 3 seconds of it, right? So if I kicked off my video with a bottle and I cheers them, it's just a way for you to differentiate yourself, right? It catches somebody's eye. It's going to be somebody's going to open it. So finding those ways to be creative in your role. And then the last one was like our support team started offering scheduled chats for people, right? Because the challenge for people that were coming into our support team was, hey, I maybe have an issue that I need to talk about, but my kid's right here. I can't talk to you right now. Can I schedule a time, right? So it's that idea that in every role you got to start being creative of how you can do your job more successfully given the circumstances.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, we- full office in a
Hey,
work
Chris.
setting to
Hey, Chris.
a virtual.
Chris. Hey, you cut out there. I think
Oh,
right as I ended, you kind of froze up.
okay. How about now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. One thing that we looked at was moving from a physical office, a physical team, into a virtual workforce, working virtually. A lot of us from our homes or corresponding through digital communications. Being in a tech company or in a tech industry, you guys are probably more used to that. But for the broader public, maybe that doesn't, that isn't used to it, how do you still what are some things that you can do as an organization to still stay cohesive and retain that culture that makes your organization unique?
Yeah, I mean, that actually is maybe a good transition even into our kind of my third point, which was celebrating small wins, right? So you're trying to shift your organization, and we heard it from a lot of teams. Like we had call centers where people are transitioning 3,000 agents that have all been in their call center now are working remote, and it's just like you're kind of shaking your head, like how do you even do it? I was talking with another customer who was involved in their training department, and they didn't have enough laptops to go around for all of their employees to be able to work remote, because a lot of them were just stations that the people were at. So they had to borrow from the training department and said, hey, these are the laptops you usually send out to your customers to do training. Can we borrow those? So there's a lot of challenges associated with that. And I think, from our perspective, it even changed our team, even though we were ready to go remote. And most of our team was remote. What we were dealing with was how do we continue to stay engaged? And so, our sales team, for example, we started having more frequent meetings. So we went from having really kind of one team meeting every week to having 4 team meetings. And a lot of those are just kind of small 15-minute ones, but it was an opportunity for us as a team to be able to get together and connect with others and hear what else is going well for other people. And I think that focus on what's going well is really important during this time. To be really happy at your job, especially in sales, where you're now facing some pretty intense challenges to hitting your quota. It's like you got to celebrate the things that are going to ultimately lead to success once we come out of this time period.
Yeah, so focusing on those small victories or even the opportunities to grow through some kind of mistake, or even maybe more important to visit right now. What I'm hearing you saying is there's almost no such thing as over communicating in an environment like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I made it a point maybe about 4 weeks in where I was thinking of some of my coworkers that I would run into when I'd be getting coffee and have conversation with, and those conversations weren't happening. And those people weren't necessarily people that I needed to interact with on a daily basis for my job, but there are people that I enjoyed engaging with. And I started reaching out, I started calling people and just checking in and saying, how are you doing, right? What are things looking like for you at home personally? And then, asking how things are going at work, asking if there's anything that I can help, and if I can share stories of what's working for me and not working for me too. And so I think those things, that over communication is really important, in reaching out to people who, you care about, and people that you maybe think need that extra attention is really important.
Yeah, and you talk too about the importance of lifting others up. In any organization that's important, but even now, like a lot of people are down, jobs are affected, personal finances are affected. How do you lift people up right now?
Yeah, I think when you think about lifting people up, it's celebrating what they're doing well, right? And that applies not only at work, it applies at home. There was a Harvard business study that I had read maybe about a month or so ago, and it analyzed kind of the 12,000 responses from people that had complex jobs, and what ultimately led to their happiness in those jobs. And it was kind of a mix of emotions, motivation, and perception. But eventually what it all boiled down to is everybody kind of qualified whether they had a good day or a bad day. And the ones that had good days, almost every single time there was some line of progress in their work, right? And so I think as you look at progress, not only at work, but also in your life, it's finding those areas where how can I drive forward during this time? And it goes back to the first one of not looking 6 months down the road, but looking for those small things and saying, hey, I really enjoyed what you said in our meeting today. Or for us, we use Slack for our internal messaging within our organization. We set up a shout outs channel where people can go and just call out other people who have done good things. So for example, we see people highlighting on there when a customer calls in and has a great interaction with our customer support team. They're acknowledging those people, and that's getting visibility to not only the people involved there and their managers, but leaders in our organization are seeing that and are commenting on that. And they're things that may not seem like huge things, but it feels really good right now to have something positive and have somebody say something positive about what you've done.
Yeah, I think now is the time when organizations are going to see, really, the rubber hits the road in terms of those building those connections with their employees and their clients and their vendors. Are they able to take the time to build those right now? Because those relationships, if they're fostered in the right manner right now, those are going to be lifetime relationships. Because in my experience, the relationships you build when things are down or when things are challenged and there isn't a lot to celebrate, those people really, feel the loyalty to that organization.
Yeah, I was listening to another conversation the other day of a restaurant owner in Los Angeles whose business, pretty much halted overnight. And he talked about, he was just scrambling for ways to try and find, how do I keep my team busy? How do I serve our community? And he had his general manager come to him and said, hey, what are we going to do? Look, if you need to let us go, we understand, right? And you could tell that was somebody who was a really strong leader because they had influenced their team enough to know that the organization looks at this and they understand it's a business. And sometimes there's unfortunate things that happen in business, but they cared enough about that leader and the praise that they have provided them along the way that they were understanding of it. And those were people that would come back and work for that person again, or maybe even hire that person. Circumstances always change. But yeah, that was actually the fourth principle that I had for me as I'm kind of taking my step back, was that idea of praising others, just being really, really important. And that's something that I felt like I've always been good at. I've been good at acknowledging other people when they've done great things, but I feel like I've had to take it to another level, and Leslie's been a big part of that. Our organization, our culture has just made that something that we see every single day. And I'm not exaggerating when I say we see something posted in our shout out channel every day, and it feels good. And I think people respond well to that, especially when it's adverse times like this.
Yeah, I think you see some of the most famous sports coaching figures out there, like a Tony Dungy or Lou Holtz, to be local, but those guys will, in looking back at their careers, they'll say, hey, we had to be a good coach, there was times when we really knew when we had to be really hard on someone for their performance to motivate a change or to inspire them to change. And on the flip side, we had to know when we needed to pull back and just encourage them. And maybe that play or that game or that part of the season didn't turn out the way we wanted, but we knew that they could do better. And as a coach, as a leader, you have to be able to know when to do one or the other. And it ultimately comes down to having those personal relationships and really caring about your organization or your team or your clients.
Yeah, and I that's the other important thing that you hit on there is is the clients, right? Is thinking about how can I help my clients. I've had at least 6 people that I've worked with recently be laid off from their jobs. And I reached out to every single one of those people and just told them that I enjoyed working with them. If there was anybody in my network that I could connect them with, I would be happy to do that. In fact, one of the people that I was connected with, I actually lined up a job interview for him. And
That's
that's not
awesome.
part of my job. That comes across from a genuine place in my heart is I enjoyed working with that person. I wish the best for them. And at some point down the road, I think I would hope that pays dividends for that person and for Lessonly and to a lesser degree for myself. But I think if you do those right things for the people that are part of your life, that you'll see those dividends come back to you. And that's not what it's about. It's not about the dividends that you're getting back, but I think it does foster a culture within your organization and outside of your organization, the perception that people have of you and your company.
Yeah. Yeah. You sow enough of those seeds with the right intention that you'll have a plentiful harvest. I think it's a great takeaway.
Yeah. You can always, see yourself being in those person's shoes, right? It's not hard to imagine in times like this that, you'd be out of a job, somewhere down the road, and you'd hope that somebody would do those same things for you. And if you've done the right things along the way, people typically will.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of great advice here for teams and organizations and companies. Where do you see? I know nobody really has a crystal ball on what's coming up next, but how do you see the Hoosier economy, the American economy, kind of pulling up its bootstraps and getting back to work, so to speak?
Yeah, I think this is one of those times, if you didn't enjoy living in Indianapolis before, you should certainly be thankful that you're living here now, right? I mean, it's fairly well insulated itself with great leadership over the past several decades to the point that, we don't have a housing market that's oversaturated, right? Home prices aren't exorbitant. Same with people's salaries, right? Where we don't have exorbitant salaries relative to the rest of the country. And our organizations typically operate in a relatively, fiscally responsible manner. And so I think we're going to be a little bit insulated from it. Like you're seeing people starting to get back to work. You haven't seen the massive layoffs that you're seeing on the East Coast and the West Coast. And so, I'm thankful from that perspective. I think, looking at the rest of the economy, like I have to expect we're going to go through a recession at this point, right? We are long overdue for one anyways. Now you see that there's 30 million people that are unemployed. And yeah, when things start to get going, I think some of those will be hired back. But I think you're going to see a little bit of period of recession. But I don't think it's going to be a long one. We're already starting to see things turn around within our organization. I think especially our commercial team that's able to focus on the smaller organizations and just kind of shift to the ones that are being successful during this period of time. They're having a lot of success. And then in the enterprise space, we're starting to see more meetings happen, contracts getting signed. And so you're starting to see that momentum. And I think we're probably going to see a little bit of a, kind of a roller coaster of, hey, things pick back up, probably have a little bit of a setback given the circumstances of what we're working through. But hey, that's part of everybody's life. And these are the things that make us stronger and make us better in the long run.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, you had a lot of great points today. I think this was great advice, for people that are experiencing the times as an organization and as a leader or in sales or dealing with clients. I think all of this is very applicable. Where can people find you at online in Lessonly? Where can they find you guys at?
Yeah, so just lessonly.com. We have a lot of great material. I think we're a great organization to follow, whether you have training needs or don't have training needs. Our marketing team is top notch. You can see some great things from them on social media of just how to market yourself and how to be genuine and how to convey the culture within your organization to others. I'm on LinkedIn. You can hit me up on email at brian.kuntz@lessonly.com. But I think the one thing that I'd maybe leave you with is the one quote that I found that just really resonates when I was thinking about this was Winston Churchill famously said, "If you're going through hell, keep going."
Yeah.
And I think this is a tough time, and we'll look back and it'll be just a blip on the radar in our lives and our professional careers. But it's important for us to push through and try to improve during this time.
Yeah. That's great stuff. That's great stuff. Well, Brian, I appreciate you being on with us today. I really do appreciate your time and all that you've shared with us.
Yeah, I love this, Chris. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, see you, brother.